We were at the Block of Orange at the corner bakery just a little bit before 9 o'clock getting breakfast, and all of a sudden all the TVs turned to the story of what was happening. There's a couple of images on the slideshow on the presentation that were images that I captured that were the images that morning that I kind of remembered. And then I actually pulled up some of the passages of my first sermon talking about 9/11. We're going to look at some of those this morning. And Chris and I are going to talk about those together. But here's some of the first images that I remember. This is the one where this was like the first thing that I saw that morning, which was, I think, about 9:03 a.m. So as the news came on, many of you may have been watching it, but they had been talking about not knowing if it was a terrorist attack. And in the middle of that conversation, these are the images that I first saw. And then the next photos were just the images that kind of carried out through that day. These are the ones that captured my attention. And then this last image of just absolute sheer devastation was unbelievable. I'm going to have Chris kind of read over just some things that we don't want to forget about 9/11.
Yeah. So it says the hijackers intentionally crashed two planes, American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175, into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. Both towers collapsed within 2 hours. Hijackers crashed American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. And the fourth jet, United Airlines Flight 93, crashed into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, on its way to the White House. The total number killed in attacks, the official figure as of September 5th, 2002, is 2,819. The number of firefighters and paramedics killed was 343. Number of New York Police Department officers was 23. Number of Port Authority police officers was 37. The number of World Trade Center companies that lost people, 60. Number of employees who died in Tower 1 was 1,402. Number of employees who died in Tower 2, 614. Number of employees lost at Cantor Fitzgerald, 658. They were at the top floor of Tower 1. I can't remember which one. Number of U.S. troops killed in Operation Enduring Freedom, 22. Number of nations whose citizens were killed in attacks, 115. And the ratio of men to women who died was 3 to 1.
You know, this is for my generation, this is our Pearl Harbor. You know, this is the thing that we remember. And I remember when I was preparing, I was kind of thinking back over the last couple of weeks, and the first message that I prepared, and what I was feeling at that time, and what I was thinking, and kind of the anger that I had. Chris mentioned it earlier. There was, I don't know if you guys felt this, but there was a thirst for blood, a thirst for revenge, you know. And I think, you know, we can kind of reflect back, and you can talk about decisions that the government made, but I can honestly tell you that the people were pushing the desire of our government to go in that direction. The nation as a whole was unified around this idea, and we wanted to strike back no matter what. Let's look at the next slide here. The world can be an ugly place. Chris, you want to read this for us?
Yeah, sure. This is Matthew chapter 24, verses 4 through 8. And Jesus answered and said to them, "See to it that no one misleads you. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will mislead many. And you will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened, for those things must take place. But that is not yet the end. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and in various places there will be famines and earthquakes. But all these things are merely the beginning of birth pangs.
You know, the Bible talks about this stuff over and over again, that in the last days things are going to be rough, man. It's going to be tough. War is an ugly thing. You know, these terrorist attacks were an ugly thing. I started listening to videos about 3 months ago on both sides of the conversation on 9/11. Have you guys ever done that? Have you ever gone on YouTube or gone on the internet and kind of researched, you know, just what both sides are saying about 9/11? And I think that the majority of Muslims, as I kind of went through a bunch of videos, just did not agree with this act of violence and terrorism against Americans. There's always going to be factions and groups of people that hate for whatever reason, and there will be no justification. I listened to some of these groups and their justification for the attack of 9/11. In fact, even their yearly celebrations because of the attack on 9/11, and I can find nothing in their statements that justifies this kind of terrorist attack. But this is something that we have to know is going to be part of the world we live in.
You know, it's funny. The best example I can come up of that compares, like Steve was saying, with the majority of Muslims saying that's not what we condone, is we have Christian groups who bomb abortion clinics. We have Christian groups who picket military funerals. We have Christians who hold signs saying God hates fags. And I don't think any one of us in here would condone any type of that behavior. And they do not speak for the entire group of Christianity, but for some reason, I don't know how it happened, for some reason after that day, Islam and Muslims got equated with, they hate, every single one of them hates America. Every single one of them are horrible people and they're terrorists. And man, looking back, that was just such a horrible, horrible thing to do to people. I mean, you listen to certain news reports, you know. I've actually just recently been introduced to NPR, which it's kind of good on the way to work and stuff like that. And so you hear these like different stories from people, and now that 9/11 is coming up, you hear a lot of stories about Muslim Americans, or even they've even been to Muslim nations and talked to them. And again, the majority of people say that regardless of whether or not they agree with how America runs itself or its practices, they don't condone that type of behavior, and they're persecuted for being associated with people who literally were just looking to hurt and to kill and to exert power. Like, I don't even know.
I think one of the reasons we have war is the nature of man. But I think that overall, I have sometimes a higher view of myself than I really am. Like when 9/11 happened, I didn't feel any kind of prejudice or any kind of bad feelings about Muslims. I just didn't have it at the time that it happened. But I realized as the years would roll on, you know, the first year would go by and the second year would go by, I actually did have prejudice in my heart. I would see people who were, anywhere from the Middle East like that, and I had a jerk reaction. I had a feeling. 9/11 has affected us all in certain ways, and you don't think that you carry that. Like, I didn't think I carried that with me. But war is something that we have to deal with. Let's go to the next slide.
2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. But realize this, that in the last days difficult times will come. For men will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, revelers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, irreconcilable, malicious gossips, without self-control, brutal, haters of good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding to a form of godliness, although they have denied its power, and avoid such men as these.
It's interesting. This verse has come up on both sides of the conversation. I'm going to talk about one side of the conversation, and I'll let Chris talk about the other. But this idea of holding to a form of godliness, you know, this was done in the name of God. This attack against America was done in the name of God. And you know, when you look at this was actually quoted by a few Muslims who agreed with the attack and actually supported the attack because they saw America as these things above. and they saw us as holding to a form of godliness, although denying its power. At the very same time, nothing in their action on 9/11 represented God in any way, shape, or form. Chris, why don't you cover that, the other part?
Well, let's go over this again. Lovers of self. That's me. Lovers of money. A little bit. Boastful. Arrogant. Not that I'm all of these things at once, but let's be honest. I'm like 50% of them all at once. No, it's just like this idea that it is so easy to look at this verse and say, yes, those people, they're lovers of self, they're lovers of money, they're boastful, they're arrogant. And never, ever, ever looking at yourself and saying, wow, I'm actually all of these things too at the same time.
Yeah, and I think part of the thing is the reason that keeps coming up that the attacks have happened is because America is, America is seen as all of these things and yet declaring itself to be a godly country. And yet we are in love with money and we are in love with all of these things. And I think that some of the first things, the reason I pulled this passage up in 2001 was to let everybody know that, you know what, we at times as Christians, we're doing things that the world is looking on and they're saying, you know what, you're saying that you're Christian, but all of these other things are indicating that really you're holding to a form of godliness, but not really denying its power. I'm not saying that we are responsible for the attack of 9/11, but what I am saying is that we have a responsibility as Christians to represent God to the world. And so as I traveled the world after 9/11, and the multiple, I don't even know how many conversations I had with people in other countries, I began to find out that really the world, much of the world, has a very dim view of America, of our materialism. Now, true, the very countries that we're buying the natural resources from, that are getting rich and not passing on those natural resources and that money to their people, are accusing us of that materialism. And that's where war is. War is when this kind of nonsense is going on. This kind of finger pointing, this kind of declaring that's who they are. And as I kind of travel the world, I would ask people, do you really think that every American is this way? Do you really think this represents Christianity? And almost every time they would say no. It represents a few. But it seems like those few always get to rise to the top. Now, at the end of the message today, we're going to have a passage on what people really need to rise to the top. The people that really need to shine the light. The people that really need to be known a particular way. And it was in 2001 when I first read the passage, and it is today the most difficult thing that we can do, but it is the thing that will show the world who we really are.
Yeah, Scott said it before. He's like, it's almost unpatriotic or un-American to say, why would they hate us so much? And to come to the realization that we do some really horrible things and we don't even think about it. I'm not going to sit up here and preach about ethical buying of your coffee or anything like that. But a lot of us love to go to Walmart because they have the cheapest goods because we don't have a lot of money. And we don't realize that the reason it's cheap is because they treat their workers horrible. And I don't mean to pick on Walmart or anything, but we buy a new pair of shoes and we don't even realize the ethical implications of that. And again, it's not like we're doing it on purpose. It is not as if we are purposely going out and saying, I want to buy these shoes because I know that a little kid from China is actually just going to get 15 cents a day for this. We don't actually do that, but it's un-American. Well, let me say, I don't believe this, but I think a lot of people think it's un-American to ask the question, am I doing the right thing? Am I, dare I say, are my actions, are our nation's actions a reason why people might hate us? It's really unpatriotic and really un-American to do that, or according to a lot of people.
I think it is. The next one, it says, we need to live in a way that honors God. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. The king's favor is towards the servant who acts wisely, but his anger is towards him who acts shamefully. I want God's blessing in my life, and I want God's blessing in our nation. When I first read this passage, or reflected on this passage in 2001, I thought to myself, we can focus on what just happened to us, or we can focus on who we need to be for God. Let's look at the next verse.
So Romans 13, verses 1 through 4. Let every person be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God.
would you agree that since 9/11 that our country, by even a lot of Christians and stuff, has been attacked for, or our government has been attacked for its actions on 9/11, for not really thinking through the process and all of that? I don't know how you guys feel about our government since 9/11, but I know this. The Bible tells me that God has placed those people in authority. That doesn't mean the decisions that they make are the decisions I would agree with, nor does it mean they are the decisions I believe that God would agree with, necessarily every decision. But one thing I've come to peace with over the last 10 years is, you know what? Let those in authority make the decisions they're going to make. That's not my responsibility. Now, I can speak out. I can have a voice in that conversation because we live in a democratic country. We can do that. But the underlying thing is I have to have enough peace to know that God is in control. I don't want to become an American basher. I don't want to pull out everything that I see that's negative when, in fact, God has put these people into power. Now you say, well, was that true with President Bush? Was that true with Clinton? Is that true with Obama? You can question anything you want to question, but at the end of the day, God is telling us that they've been raised up. Now, this passage is a little out of context. Let me explain. This passage was written to Christians who were getting this attitude about rebelling against the Roman authorities. And Roman authorities were, I mean, if you want to look at horrible governments that mistreated people and abused people, the Roman government was absolutely that government. And in that environment and in that context, God was saying, they're there for a purpose. Just keep the law. Do what you're supposed to do so that they don't pull out the sword and use it against you. In other words, I've placed them there. They have a purpose. They have a place. Doesn't mean that he wasn't saying everything that Rome is doing is right. And God isn't asking us to say everything that our country does or that our government leaders do is right. He's not asking us to say that. But he is asking us to respect them. And one of the things I think that's broken my heart, and when I watch these videos, I forced myself for a couple of hours yesterday just to watch 9/11 videos. And what breaks my heart is this attack on America, which is really oftentimes an attack on these heroes that I've grown to have an incredible admiration for. United 93, I mean, can you imagine what was going on in there? I mean, I watched the documentary on it and a couple other things. What was going on in that plane? What was in the hearts of those people? Those are American people. Those are American heroes. Those are people that in the midst of whatever was happening, they put everything on the line to protect. They didn't even know what. They didn't even know where that plane was going. They just knew what was happening. They had to step up. What about the firefighters that rushed into a burning building? I mean, they were in Tower 1 and in Tower 2 when it collapsed. I mean, 300 and something paramedics and firefighters lost. American heroes. You can cast all the insult you want at us as a government or us as a country, but I still, to this day, I'm proud to be an American because there are people in America who will rush into burning buildings, who will take planes down when they know it's going to harm somebody else. There's something great about our country that I admire, that I love, and that I respect, and God is asking us to share that respect.
Yeah, over the past, since we've been thinking about this, because it was probably about a month ago, we're like, oh, 9/11 is on a Sunday. We got to start thinking ahead. The questions that kept popping up for me are, is it possible for me, because I can't speak for any of you, is it possible for me to be anti-war and yet still support my country's troops? Is it possible for me to be, to not support my country's stance on war and yet still support my government? It's not black and white. And people can quote this verse all the time, but that doesn't answer the question. Or maybe it's not even the right question. Is it possible? Yes. What does that look like? Oh, shoot. I have no idea. You know, because a lot of the times if you go against, especially, I guess I'll say, from my perspective as a, see here, I was 17 to 22-ish when, during President Bush's second term. And so there was a lot of people that hated Bush. And I'm not going to say whether or not I hate him or dislike him or love him, whatever. But there's a lot of people that said, if you don't support what the president does, you're not being a good Christian. Really? That's how it works? Really? So I can't be against war. I can't be against sending people somewhere knowing that they're going to be in harm's way. I can't be against that? What? why, I guess, again, as a 17, 18, 19-year-old, those were some of the struggles that I was having. How is it possible to be anti-war, to want to promote love and compassion and grace and forgiveness, and yet still support people who are going over to accomplish a mission, and still want them to be safe, and still want them to come home in one piece? Like, how the heck do you reconcile those vast differences in opinion? I don't have an answer still, but
I think I'm definitely anti-war. Is there a place for it? I don't even know how to respond to that. Obviously, we have war, and I think we have to do what we can. Let's go to the next slide. I can't even get into it this morning. Every time I start talking about it, I get on this soapbox thing, and I just don't even want to go there on Sunday morning. How should Christians respond to evil?
Romans 12, 14 through 21. Oh, I don't like reading this one. Bless those who persecute you. Keep on blessing them and never curse them. Rejoice with those who are rejoicing. Cry with those who are crying. Live in harmony with each other. You want me to keep going? Do not be arrogant, but associate with humble people. Do not think you are wiser than you really are. Do not pay back evil for evil, but focus your thoughts on what is right in the sight of all people. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live in peace with all people. Do not take revenge, dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, vengeance belongs to me. I will pay them back, declares the Lord. But if your enemy is hungry, feed him. For if he is thirsty, give him a drink. If you do this, you will pile burning coals on his head. Do not be conquered by evil, but conquer evil with good.
Prior to 9/11, I used to go and listen to Dr. Mori. I don't know if you guys remember who Dr. Mori was, but he's written a number of books on Islam. And I remember going to one of his seminars where he had just released a book on Islam and was talking about the Quran and just talking about the fundamentalism and everything that was going on. And I remember something was stirring inside of me. A question was stirring inside of me. And the question was, what is the Christian community doing to share the love of Jesus with the Muslim communities? Like, what are we really doing? Like, what's going on in the world? And at the time, I researched a little bit, and there were a few fragmented ministries that were doing outreaches in all kinds of areas within the Middle East. But there was really no united effort. In fact, as I began to research, I realized that a lot of people had just written off the Middle East as if there's no hope. I would read statements like this, well, that's just the way those people are. They're a people of war. They've always been a people of war. We need to stay out of their business. Just let them go and do what they're going to do. After 9/11, there was a resurgence of these same types of conversations about, we have no business going over there. They've always been a people of war. Don't try to introduce democracy to these people. And when I thought about this passage in 2001, and I began to reflect on it, I thought, I wonder had we responded differently as a Christian nation, and I'm not even talking as a government, I'm talking about as Christians in our nation. What if we had sent 10,000 Christians over there to Iraq? 10,000 believers to simply ask the question, why do you hate us? We're not even gonna respond. We're not even gonna ask. We're just gonna ask one question: why do you hate us? And you can just say anything you want to say. We want to reconcile. We want to find ways to love you as a people, to love you as a country. And I began to share that message as I went first to Australia, and then I went back over to Europe, and then I ended up going down into India or can't remember now, but Nepal. Thank you. As I remember asking this question to people, what if we would have responded? I'm not talking governmentally how we responded, but as a Christian nation. Well, first of all, they probably wouldn't let us send 10,000 Christians over there unarmed to ask that question, But what would that have looked like? What would an initial response of, why do you hate us so much? Just tell us. We're willing to listen right now. You've definitely got our attention. You've definitely expressed hate. There was definitely dancing in the streets. Now, again, I don't believe it represented most of Islam, okay? But it did represent that faction of Islam. For me, when I read, bless those who persecute you and keep on blessing them and never curse them, that is the highest call and the highest Christian duty is to bless an enemy and to not curse an enemy. And to me, it has been, and it still is, the most difficult challenge. I want to think of myself as not having prejudice. I want to think of myself as not having a hatred in my heart, or an anger in my heart. But I have all of those things still in many ways. But I don't, just because my emotional position is one thing, my response can be different. My response can be, I can say, God, I'm going to bless those who persecute, and bless those, and keep blessing, and never curse those. I'm going to find a way to love them. Find a way to express my love to them. There's something I believe about love, and I don't know if you believe it, but I believe that love can conquer everything. I believe it is the grace and love of God that causes people to deny ungodliness and wickedness in this present age. And I believe that it is that extension of love that needs to be expressed. When I think about the families and what they went through, I'm not asking them to do this, to be honest with you. I'm not even saying emotionally they can even come close to this, but we can start to do it for them. We can start to be this kind of Christian who reaches out in this way. I don't ask the victim of rape to forgive the person who's raped him. God has to do a wonderful, amazing miracle for that to ever happen. I think you would agree with that. That's not something you would ever require of a victim, that you need to step up and you need to forgive. God has to do a miracle before a heart can do that. Husbands and wives can have horrible things happen between them, and we can hear those stories. And as we hear those stories, we can say, wow, that's terrible. But we don't go to the victim and we don't say, but God wants you to forgive. That's something the Holy Spirit has to do. It has to be a miracle. And for a nation, for this to happen, for us as a Christian nation, I also believe in many ways, in my heart, for sure, this miracle has to happen. But I want this miracle to happen. I want this to be the way that I respond. Do not pay back any evil for evil. That's the person I want to be.
So I have a bunch of things going through my head right now. So I'm going to try and I'm going to do one at a time. First thing is I want to take the what if game a step further. And what if instead, maybe on top of going and asking that one question, what if we actually, after our military operations, what if we actually sent 10,000 Christians over and just rebuilt cities? What if we did that? What kind of message would that send? And not even, I know this is going to be like blasphemy. What if we didn't talk to them about God? What if we just went over and rebuilt their cities for no other reason other than it's the right thing to do? Not try to convert them, not try to get into arguments about why Islam is wrong and Christianity is right. What if we just went over and blessed them and keep on blessing them? What if we did that? What would it look like? Again, sometimes playing the what if game is dangerous, but I think it's a fun exercise right now. That's one. The second thing is, I was talking with Emily today about how difficult it was to find songs that fit the emotions and the feelings that surround 9/11. Because it is difficult for me, without even experiencing 9/11 firsthand, to sing "Blessed be the name of the Lord" when when the sun's shining down on me and when I'm on the road to suffering. How difficult is that really? It's not easy. I'll give you a little glimpse into my brain. As I was singing that song today, I was having a conversation with myself, with God, I don't know, saying, how the heck am I singing these words right now? How is this? It doesn't feel right to me. Not the worshiping God part, but that idea of, there are times I don't want to bless God's name. I don't want to do the right thing. I don't want to do that. And I think, again, I'm gonna take a leap. I think God is okay with that feeling and that emotion. I mean, it's obviously not the posture we want to have, but I think our God is willing to work with us and be with us at wherever spot we're at and to move us to the next stage. So like Steve was saying, yeah, how do you get families that are in that place that today they're not here looking at all these images. They're trying to not watch TV. they're on vacation in Montana somewhere that is so far away from technology and everything because they can't experience this. We're going to ask them to do this like that? It just doesn't seem fair sometimes. Which brings me to the next thing. I think a lot of times we equate forgiveness with forgetting. You know, we have that saying, oh, forgive and forget. I don't know if that's really a Christian type of thought. Because forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. Forgiveness is a posture of the heart. It's this idea of something bad happened, whatever it may be. For us, it could be 9/11. And forgiveness isn't saying it's okay what you did. What you did is okay. It's not condonement. It's not even reconciliation sometimes. It is a posture of the heart saying, I am not going to let this event continue to drag me into horrible places. I'm not going to let this event affect how I live my life. I'm not going to let this event keep me from living the best life possible. That's forgiveness. And so that first quote when it said, it takes time to heal, but you never forget. Yeah, you never do. I don't think we should. I've said it before, you know, a husband and a wife, they separate. Oh, well, you know, all is forgiven and forgotten. Really? Did he hit you? Was he physically abusive? Was he verbally abusive? Was she physically abusive or verbally abusive? Do you really want to forget that? It's ridiculous to think that forgiveness and forgetting go hand in hand. They don't. It's a posture of the heart. I think that's all I got.
And, you know, it's hard, but I like taking the time to pause. I mean, 9/11 fell on a Sunday. We didn't do this last year. We had just a brief moment of prayer last year for the victims and heroes of 9/11. But I like to pause and reflect. I mean, it was really hard for me to sit and watch the videos, you know, to sit and go through. I went through the first, you know, I skimmed through the first 6 hours of the day, I think on CBS or ABC, one of them. And I just kind of went through and skimmed through it. To sit with it is so hard to do. It's like, and I thought on a Sunday morning, I just want to tell everybody, God just loves you and he smiles on you and give you a sugar cookie and, you know what I mean? That's what I want to do, you know? And I just want us to smile and go outside and have a Hug a Muslim day. And, you know, I just do, you know, I want it to be that way. But I find that we don't do this very often as a church. We have to sit with ugly things. We have to sit with ugly things. You know, I chose that video because it was the least violent, you know, and harsh of the videos. And we had a number of videos to go through. Andy Stanley's church actually produced this video. The images are graphic enough, and it communicates enough. And I tried to tone it down, but I think as an individual, I don't think you should tone it down. I think you should sit with it. Somebody asked me, what about the children who were, you know, just being born? What do we tell them about 9/11? How much of this should they really see? Do we really want to develop a hatred in their heart for Muslims and for Islam and all of that? Do we really want to breed that in the generation that really was being born at the time and some who were too young to even understand it at the time? And I don't have an answer for that other than I know about Pearl Harbor. And it doesn't make me hate the Japanese, and it doesn't make me hate Germans, and it doesn't, you know, none of that. I don't have that hatred in my heart, but it makes me understand what we've gone through as a nation. Sitting with the things that are ugly. At what age, I have no idea. If you tell a 9-year-old that and you show them all these horrible videos, or a 10-year-old. I personally wouldn't do that. But sometimes I think we have to sit with things that are really, really ugly. I wanted to give people an opportunity to share this morning. We really don't have time. We're going to have communion. But if you have any thoughts about 9/11, any feelings about it, you just want to email us, you can go on the website. We have an email on there that you can contact us with. And just kind of share some thoughts. And maybe even next week we'll just read some of those thoughts if anybody wants to share any. I want to have some prayer.
I remembered my last thing.
Oh.
Yeah. We talked about it in the office. And I was like, that's the fourth thing. You know, a lot of times people talk about Christianity being like suffering and being hardships and being trials and persecutions. And I think for the most part, I think when we talk, or not, I keep using the royal we. I know it's really difficult to say that. When I hear people talk about that, a lot of times they use it in the context of, I'm a Christian, and so people don't agree with what I believe in, and so they make fun of me, and that's a trial and persecution. To an extent, yes, I would agree. But let's be honest. In the United States, we're not persecuted in the same ways as the early church was. We get to do this every Sunday. We get to say we're Christians. We actually get to go out in the world and live out our Christian lives and not have a fear of being crucified. So I think the reason why Christianity is hard for a lot of us here in nations where we have freedom of religion, I think the reason why it's so difficult has to do with this stuff. The hardship is blessing those who persecute you. That is not easy. The hard thing is not paying back evil for evil. You know, Steve was talking about this. When two kids are in a sandbox and one kid throws sand, right, and we see it, and then the other kid throws it back, you know, they both get in trouble. You know, it's this idea of, we get it though. We get the fact that, yeah, it's not fair. You know, he got to throw sand at you. Yeah, it should only be fair. You should throw sand right back, you know? I mean, that's how I'm going to raise my kids, and I'll let you know how it goes after 18 years. But, you know, this idea, bless those who persecute you. Do not pay back anyone evil for evil. Do not take revenge. Leave room for God's wrath. Vengeance belongs to me. The hardship, the suffering, is having to do those things. Because everything inside of me wants to say, no. No, I'm not going to leave. No, no, God, let me do your wrath. I'm the one who's supposed to take out the wrath. Let me work through me. You know, I am here as a vessel. Use me. That's what we like to say. And that's the difficult part, I think.
And this is a rough one. You can just go to it, Romans 12, 14 through 21 at home and try to sit with this thing. But do not be conquered by evil, but conquer evil with good. Man, that's a rough go. And I agree with Chris. I mean, if I had a kid, somebody threw sand at him, I'd tell him, hey, do something nice for the kid. Give him an apple, a poison one. But, you know, it's like, he thinks you're being nice, but it's taking him out. Because that's how we are. You watch way too many, like, CSI and covert affairs type of shows, man. You know, do not be conquered by evil. I don't know. I don't want to become the very thing I hate. Hopefully this passage is something that we can aspire to and something we can ask God to work into our lives. So let's bring the worship team up. We're going to have communion right now. I'm going to actually ask maybe Scott and Karen to pass out the elements for it. You guys can start doing that right now. And we're just going to have a prayer for the families who suffered so much loss and all that stuff. So let's have a word of prayer. Father, we ask right now for all of those who suffered loss, this horrible attack, for every family member, for the kids that really never got to grow up and know their parents, their loved ones, the wives who suffered loss, and the husbands, that you would pour your Spirit out on them today, that there would be memorial services and there would be things happening that would let them know that we remember, that we have not forgotten their suffering, that we stand next to them, we stand beside them, that we search daily, diligently, to resolve these difficult things that happen in our world so that others may never have to experience the same thing. For those that rushed into burning buildings and brought down airplanes, for their families who lost heroes, Lord, fill them today with a sense of awe and amazement that they got to know and got to spend time with men and women who were so brave and so amazing. Fill their hearts with a joy and a sense of power to simply just be that kind of American, that kind of person. For those that brought down these horrible attacks on America, find them wherever they are and pour out your Spirit on them. Send Christians with messages of love and encouragement. May they cross the paths of your people who will love them, who will show them a different side of who you are, the side of who you really are. Lord, never give up on them. Never turn your face away from them. Seek them out to the farthest corners of the earth, that your love may be poured out upon them. Lord, fill us up this day with a heart that can truly love our enemies. May we never be overcome with evil, but may we always overcome evil with good. We pray in Jesus' name.